Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
All right, this podcast is about when is the right time to bring this up with my partner. And we're really diving into knowing the line between expression and temporary suppression.
Now, before we share a personal story from this last week and how we really needed to reflect on this is one of the most common challenges that couples will share with us, whether it's in a DM or it's in a coaching application, is this feeling like marriage feels hard because it feels like there's never a good time. You know, maybe you both say this to each other. You're bringing this up now, or you start to make it about how the other person brought it up. And then now you feel like instead of having the conversation that's needed, you're arguing about timing and approach. And so you're like dancing.
Or frequency.
Yes. So you're not even having the actual conversation. You're arguing about having the conversation.
Yeah.
And it feels frustrating because what we want in a marriage, all of us, is to feel as though we can talk, we can communicate, we can work through issues before they become big things. We want to feel that safety and that ability to really work through it. Now, we experienced not feeling that ease these last few days. Now, luckily, we use our tools so we can course correct quickly without it spiraling. But to be real, this last week was hard, not just because of this dynamic showing up in our marriage, but I had a lot going on. There were a couple big things that happened with some close people in my life that felt very turbulent, that felt very triggering, and put me in a vulnerable state of mind. And I'm usually a very mentally tough, resilient person. I've got a strong mindset. But when certain things happen with people in my life, I feel kind of broken, kind of vulnerable and not like myself. I'm not as tough. I'm not as strong. And so not only that, but I was going through my feminine hormonal cycle. So I definitely feel more vulnerable when I'm in that week and I am not thinking as clearly, right? So all these things were happening and I didn't feel like myself. On top of that, it was a week where in parent life with our daughter, she wanted me nonstop and wasn't just saying it kindly. She's yelling at me, right? In this like, Mom. And, luckily we work all the parenting tools in and really trying to teach her communication and modeling it to her and all the things, but it doesn't make it not difficult. And even over the weekend, it was a long weekend for Easter, like she was not having it with you, right? And she was constantly, Mom, this, I couldn't walk more than a few feet away, right? So she was just having a weekend of being very attached.
Which for the parents is always when it's both of us, but when my daughter and myself are one-on-one, it's way different.
It is. Yeah. She's very different with you when it's just the two of you. And so we were having to be offering her a lot of patience, really having to work through that. But it was hard when I was already in a really vulnerable spot.
So just to add a little bit from my side, basically, I knew all these things were happening because you communicated to me. I knew about everything that you were talking about. Obviously, I'm witnessing our daughter. And so you said about midweek, hey, this is rough. I'm going to need more grace. So give you context, that's where I was at.
Yeah, so he is offering me a lot of grace. I mean, and the beautiful thing, there's many beautiful things about Aaron, but he will show up in action, right? Like he hears me, okay, got it. You're having a hard week, you need grace. And he just gets into action and he gets things done and he's carrying all that. And so I felt really, really supported in that way. And in a sense, we were kind of just having to function because of all the things going on behind the scenes that were very turbulent. And so I felt very supported logistically. The weekend, we're just kind of like navigating Easter activities, making it really fun for our daughter. I'm trying to get through the hormonal cycle, so I didn't have a lot left over. So all this leads up to Sunday. And I had been just feeling like this growing disconnect with us. And something that we really try to do in our relationship is catch that disconnect as early as possible so that we can course correct, right? We don't let it drag on and make it really become this huge wedge between us. So Sunday morning, like I'm playing with Play-Doh with our daughter. Aaron's kind of doing things around the kitchen. And in hindsight, know it probably wasn't the best time because our daughter was still in the kind of like screeching for me. Every time Aaron and I tried to say something to her, even if it was about cooking breakfast, she'd go, I want attention. Mm-hmm. And so we could not get more than 3 words out to each other with that. But I was just feeling this growing disconnect. I was feeling like we were off. We weren't in sync. Yes, we were getting things done, but I didn't feel this like partnership emotionally. And so I brought it up to Aaron, and I won't go into the play-by-play of it because it didn't turn out to be the best approach. And we'll go into some bullet points as to why so that you consider these for yourselves.
Yeah, in being able to talk this through last night, here's the simple way to put it, right? I personally, from Jocelyn sharing that with me, and look, this isn't like we both have the awareness of this statement, right? This is in our debrief later in the night. We understand that. So for me, I felt unappreciated and you felt less loved, right? So just making that really simple. And I see that I didn't respond with understanding when you brought it up, as I felt it was really like, as most guys can attest, I felt it was an inaccurate portrayal, not betrayal, portrayal of how I showed up. And then I ended up kind of like laughing, or as you put it, scoffing. I also was trying to say, our daughter is obviously yelling in the middle of this conversation, so this isn't a good time. I didn't probably say it that kindly. And so the takeaway here, right, as we get into this whole podcast episode theme, is that in a marriage, you need a balance of assertiveness about your own needs and when to hold things in. Now, these can be very small things. They can be medium, big. It doesn't necessarily matter. I think even for myself, it's more of like the small to medium things. And so if you hold things in, they're likely to come up in a less constructive way. Right? So that means we have to be assertive, but you can't be pointing out all the negative things that your partner is doing or all the things you even want to be better. You have to be doing both, hey, positive things, here's what I appreciate about you, here's what I've been noticing, and there's the room for the quote-unquote assertiveness about what you need more of. And ultimately that even with that, you have to take into account what the emotional environment is that each of you are in. So where does that bring us? I went about the whole week personally considering all the things you mentioned. So there were 2 or 3 things that came up during the week for me that I felt, wow, okay, not very appreciative, actually felt a little mean to me. But I considered the entirety of all the things that were happening for you. So I didn't bring them up. Okay. And I wish I could say that, well, that by itself was a win. I don't know. We were really just talking this out yesterday, and why we want to bring us up on the podcast is in some way, me kind of holding that back over a week. And obviously there's how I would have brought it up, which we'll get into, but it led me to that when you were bringing up to me your sort of, let's call it dissatisfaction with our connection, I just didn't do a good job of holding the space of understanding you, or even having a conversation with more kindness or curiosity, saying, hey, and that you even told me this, hey, babe, Sky's pretty upset. Let's have this conversation another time. No, I was kind of frustrated and kind of scoffed that, look, your daughter is yelling right next to you. You obviously can't see this is a bad time.
And those 2 different ways land very differently, right?
So there is the conundrum, right? We have to be assertive about our needs. We have to share appreciations with the things we want to be better. And we have to take into account the emotional state and environment we're both in. So how we want to go through this is, if you think about, on one hand, it's when do I express? On the other hand, when do I temporarily suppress?
Yeah.
Because even how we're saying that, right? The thing to take away is you aren't going to be expected to hold back all these things forever, right? That's not a marriage. You have to be able to express things. But I think it really is about, hey, this can be temporary. And as we get into the points here, there may be some places where in your reflection you realize, oh, it's not that big of a deal. So that's how we want to walk through this, right? If you want to do the first one, we're going to go 3 times where you should express and 3 times you should suppress.
And then we will also give some logistical points about the literal timing. Because I know some people are like, okay, but Freeman's like, no, when's the best time? You know, because my partner says it's not a good time. I just finished work.
But first you got to decide, is this something to express or
Yes.
suppress?
So that's what we're going to hit on first. So the first express is you want to express it when there is a pattern or theme forming. And so for me, when I was feeling this disconnect, this wasn't just a fleeting moment of like, I was just feeling disconnected, so I was just reactively expressing it in the moment. Believe me, I've fallen into that in past scenarios. But this one, I actually had just noticed things over the last few days that were having me not feel emotionally connected. And again, Aaron was showing up in all the actions. Like, you're such a good action taker, and that makes you an incredible partner. And I was noticing that just the vulnerable place I was in, there were certain things that were just having me not feel that love and connection just in the state that I was in. So I had been thinking about, is this a pattern or theme forming? And it was feeling that way for me. I know I didn't do it in the best way.
Well, yeah. And, as we go through this, hopefully you just take the point away to really make a difference. But you can just see how both of your perspectives are often very different.
Yeah.
And I know I talked to a number of men. I just didn't even agree with what you just said.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the difference of perception, right?
I know this is why it's such a tough one, right? It's even you saying that to me yesterday. It's like, well, I didn't agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Could
I have done a little bit more in terms of like physical affection and checking in with you more? And I also had things I brought up to you. We're not going to go into the details, but that's a tough part, because even when you brought that up, it's like, well, I just don't even really agree with what you're saying. But let me do one of the suppression, right? So you just did express.
Mm-hmm.
Now, suppress. And I know we're having like more of an open conversation here, right? I did this part well throughout the week, and then on this Sunday, yesterday, when it came up, I probably didn't do it well, right? But so suppress temporarily is when it's likely that your partner is reacting from an external source. So the the 2 or 3 things for me throughout the week that I didn't really appreciate how I was, spoken to. Mm-hmm. In the moment, I suppressed it temporarily because I realized that everything else you had shared with me midweek, the 2 situations with people in your life, with Sky, with your cycle. Okay, so something happens, and then boom, I consider, all right, something didn't land well for me, but now is not the time. You already have communicated with me. You needed more grace, this week. I can totally do that. You're obviously not even responding to me from something I'm doing or not doing. This is likely from an external source. Like, you made that clear to me. So that's an easy one. I can temporarily suppress that when it's clear my partner is responding from something else happening. And I think as we get into the timing, it becomes a little bit more nuanced on, well, do I wait till all those external things have resolved for my partner, or how do I bring that up? And I think you're going to close out this podcast episode with more of that. But now getting to the Sunday, I don't know. I expressed in response to you expressing something to me, which typically isn't the best because it hijacks the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for acknowledging that you hijacked it.
Yeah, totally. And so I don't know. I don't even know if I have an answer for myself yet. Maybe I'll get one to the end of this conversation, right? But throughout the week, suppressed. When you did share something with me, I I defended. I said, I don't agree with that. And so I expressed, but it didn't really help us.
And I appreciate that you're being authentic with people, right? Like we're humans as well, even though we do this work. And what you just said, I think, is a really important reminder for all of us about communication is that when we're talking to our partner about feelings or our experience recently, is it even about agreeing? I don't know. I don't think that is actually the outcome that you're always going to reach, right? Like, I don't know that you're both going to agree in all instances because you're both coming from your own biased experience, which is based off of your psychology, your chemistry in that moment. Like for me, I was hormonal and I'm a female, and I was also in a very vulnerable spot because of things that were going on in other relationships. And so what I do think, I wish we could have recorded our debrief later in the evening because it was actually just, it was a very...
Let's be clear on what you just said.
Sure.
You said it correctly, but I just feel like someone listening.
Yeah.
Record our debrief.
Yes.
Not record our conflict.
No.
We're not about that.
No. We're not about like, oh, really? I'm going to start to record you.
Yeah.
No, the debrief only for people to hear because although we couldn't fully agree with each other's perception, at least I feel as though we were able to hear each other and put ourselves in each other's shoes and see where the other person was coming from. So I just want to make that an important point. When you're talking about feelings and experiences, I don't think you should even be focusing on whether you agree that makes sense. I want to just understand my partner's perception, where their feelings were coming from, and know how I can be an even better partner this coming week.
And when we did this was Sunday at 7 p.m. when our daughter was asleep,
Yep.
just to give you context on the win.
So let's go to the next express. Express it when it's truly important to you. And so that is something you want to reflect on to Aaron's point earlier, we don't want to air every little grievance or annoyance. That would feel like we're walking on eggshells. Like we can't get it right. Like we can't just be human. And
it's never good enough.
Yeah.
You don't accept me.
It could feel very depleting to the love account. And so that reflection of, is this actually important to me? Versus we should just give this a press.
Which I'll do now. It seems like you got the expresses and I got the suppresses. Didn't even plan it that way.
But we're not saying you are the suppressor in the relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not putting you in that box.
So the suppress then is, well, and why it's temporary suppression is you do need to have the feeling, the little upset, the little frustration. And so long as, like you mentioned, it's not a pattern that's forming yet, you don't even know if it's really that important, that's when you suppress. And you suppress long enough to really consider for yourself the level of importance this is to you. Mm-hmm. Now, we say that because in the moment, most people would say, oh, this is really important, I got to get it out right now. And I don't know, if we were just, let's call it 50%. 50% of the time, maybe that's true. 50% of the time, it's not. It's just that you have this emotion, you feel that you're being misrepresented, you feel like you're not being heard, you feel like you've been holding this part back, you feel like it's not accurate. And so in that emotion, oh yeah, this is a 10 out of 10 importance for me. It's like, well, I don't know if that's really the case. So suppress it, be with the feeling, give yourself some time to consider what's the real level of importance here on this particular topic.
Yeah, I think that one is clear. I think we can even move on to the next one. So the next express then is you want to express it when the action breaks an agreement or is below the standard that both of you set. So this can apply for sure, not only to your relationship, but even parenting dynamics. And we've been working with a lot of parents, I think, because we just attract people because we have a daughter, we share those different dynamics. And man, parenting, there's so much to say about it, but it's a time where you can kind of be on each other more because we're not all perfect. We're trying to do the best that we can as parents. And we definitely can see our partner get frustrated with our kids, be maybe snappy with them, be short. And you can think to yourself, they shouldn't talk to them like that. And you do it too at times, right?
Or, even beyond parenting, though, it's you've set a boundary for the minimum standard of how you're going to treat each other. And in the moments of emotion, you can't treat me like that. So
Right.
if we were to rename this one, it's holding the boundaries you've both set.
So yeah, to that point, great point. This would be applicable definitely to parenting scenarios, but also in times of conflict. So you guys know, if you've been a listener for a while, we're big on having agreements for times of conflict. That's in our de-escalating conflicts guide, how to create your agreements and reinforce them in the moment. And we just think 4 is a good number to remember. Now, certainly if you are in the heat of the moment and an agreement is getting broken, or just an agreement that you established for operating in life, then certainly you want to bring it up. I think that, again, it's about how. You don't want to say it in an attacking way or in a way that escalates things further. It comes across instead rather like, hey, let's remember our agreements, babe.
That's a good way to put it. I was even thinking, yeah, if it gets heightened, right? The answer to this question for this podcast is yes, you express in the moment that an agreement is broken or the standard, your partner is way below their standard.
Yeah.
And you should have already talked about this. So it's, hey, this is not our agreement, right? You could say it like that. So long as it's something that you have already talked about, you've made into agreement, you both say that this is my minimum standard, then when you're below that, you have to have it in your marriage that this is the moment. This isn't something to suppress because, well, I'm not going to be treated like this. And number 2, it's just a way for us to keep, if you will, I don't know why I thought of this word, the sanctity, the honor, the respect in our marriage. And so sometimes emotion gets high. We default to old patterns. Hey, that's going beyond the boundary. That's going beyond the agreement. And if you both agreed, then that to me is the appropriate way to say it. And it should be then received immediately by your partner.
Yeah. So then on the other side, the suppress point for this one.
Oh, I want to do this one. I know
Okay,
I took
go
yours.
ahead. That's okay.
And then you can add to it. Because this is really one of the parts that I took away from our conversation yesterday. And not all the things we talk about are linear, but if you've considered these other points, express, suppress, then you ultimately do want to get to this place where you suppress when, because of the love and the grace and the respect you have for your life partner, you can just let it go. And again, it's something you have to really be aware of in the moment. Okay, we already covered 5 other things that you can consider, you can talk about with your partner. And this is maybe where I could do or could have done more work. Okay, yes, harder week. Yes, I suppressed a couple of things.
Temporarily,
yeah. And maybe that was part of my work, was understanding when would have been a good time, for you, which I think you'll close us out with. And our daughter was still yelling. Like she was wanting to do Play-Doh with you.
She goes,
and
I
you were
want
wanting
attention.
to bring up something with me, right? And I realized maybe I kind of went past what I was sort of willing to continue to suppress, but and I think part of my psychology was like, I've already suppressed for a week, so now it's my time, right? I really could have leaned on that you are my partner and that you just need some love and grace in this moment, and I can let this go.
Oh, thank you for saying that. And I certainly, this is one of the things I got in our debrief, was I certainly can get better at offering more grace to you. Like I definitely can, just hold you to such a high standard at times, and then I forget to offer that grace. And so that was a takeaway for me of like, wow, I could definitely grant you that more. Now, all of these points are questions to be asking yourself to really like filter out, is this something I should bring up? And this doesn't have to take you 3 days to reflect on, right? Like you could reflect on this on a drive home from work or on a run. It's that the fact that you even take that time to reflect will filter out a lot of unnecessary points that cause friction, because I really hope you're taking this away, that if you just vocalized every feeling and thought that came to your mind, it would really create a breeding ground for unnecessary conflict in your relationship. There has to be room for that humanity, that grace, that not everything needs to be a thing. Now, I know you're thinking, okay, Freemans, all right, I got it. I need to go on a run, or I need to drive to work, or whatever it is. And I need to ask myself these questions. Okay, I'm going to do that. Now, if I go through all of those and I think, yes, this is something I do feel I want to bring up, when is the literal time to bring it up? Okay. And here's the thing. I hope both of you are listening to this episode, because we can't always have the excuse that this is never a good time, because life is always going to life.
That's a good point.
You're always going to be tired at the end of the day, right? Like that's just a fact. You're tired after work and getting the kids to bed and cleaning up the kitchen. So it can't be Monday through Sunday that you're too tired for the conversation. It also is there's always going to be stressors. There's always going to be things that are needing your attention. So again, we have to be honest with ourselves of, am I always saying it's not a good time and constantly, keeping my partner at bay that they can never bring something up? Okay. Now, with all those points in consideration, then yes, we want to think about the logistical things of not right before bed. Or if we know our partner had a very difficult day at work, okay, maybe I could table this one for tomorrow. Also, it's probably not ideal if the kids are yelling at us. I'm admitting that was my mistake yesterday. She was literally we could not get 3 words out.
I mean, we were having to get louder just to talk over her saying,
to talk about cooking.
Mom, give me the attention, play now.
And all we were saying was what to cook for breakfast. And so, okay, I admit that was not the literal best time for the conversation. But again, even at the end of the night, when we got our daughter for bed, we could have very easily thought to ourselves or said to each other, this isn't the best time. All right. We had a nonstop 3 days holiday break with her. I'm exhausted. I just want to watch a show. But you know what? We both were willing to talk because we didn't want to start the Monday off disconnected. So yes, we were both tired. Yes, we would have preferred to not have something to talk about and just watch a show and chill out. But our relationship matters, and us being connected matters.
I don't want to give too many little details, but we've done both. There are times where, and I look at the clock. I literally, when you sat down on the couch, I turned to the left. It was 7. And I thought to myself, we can construct this conversation and it's early enough. To be honest, if it was 8 o'clock, I wouldn't have. Because we've done that before.
Yep.
And I also know that part of the night for you is it's very, very important to reduce stimulation. You need to be able to land your emotional plane from the day, and so you can sleep well.
Yes.
So again, honestly, 8 o'clock, I would have been like, well, we'll talk about this tomorrow. 7 o'clock, we want to have a good week. We want to have a good Monday. There's enough time here. We can structure this conversation. We're both here. No one's yelling. No one else is yelling at us. Okay, we can have this conversation now.
So those are all worthwhile points about the timing. The ultimate timing. Okay, I'm going to give you the best strategy that has made a difference for us, and especially in the first several years of us mastering communication skills, was having a family meeting check-in once a week. So we know that there's a lot of new listeners to our podcast. So if that's a new term, basically we believe that one of the best ways to communicate and strengthen your communication as you're mastering kind of the nuances of that is to have a weekly time that you are checking in. And there's a specific structure that would be too long to explain right now. That's not what the main episode is about, but it's a specific time that you're checking in so that it doesn't feel like on a random Tuesday or a random Friday, or it's every day that we have to have these things brought up about our relationship or the logistics, or right, because you do want space and time for just levity and lightness and random chats and just being able to catch up on your day. But you also don't want to push it off for weeks and weeks, because then you're piling up these issues. So having a weekly check-in, and because we don't have time to go into all of that right now, we have a family meeting guide. It is truly one of the best things that you can do for your relationship. Men love it. Women love it. It's an incredible way to communicate better and prevent conflict. And there's 2 ways that you can get the family meeting guide. One, you can get it as a separate product on our website. We'll link this in the show notes. We have meetthefreemans.com/links. That's where you can find basically all of our popular resources. So you can either get it as a separate resource, The best way is you actually get our family meeting guide as a bonus gift when you sign up for our 30-day Prioritizing Us Couples Challenge, because we have 3 different challenges. And so Prioritizing Us, remember, that's the one that we recommend everyone do. Like, everyone can benefit from the Prioritizing Us Couples Challenge to connect, to communicate better, to feel more in sync, and you get the family meeting guide as a bonus gift. So that is logistically one of the best things that you can do, because you both then go into the conversation, because you know it's going to happen, in a more receptive place of, okay, this is the time that we said we were going to check in. And not just like, spit random things at each other, but follow these prompts to connect, to course correct, to get on the same page and be receptive to each other. Now, you need to make the time for it. So this is where, again, you can't have the excuse of, I'm always tired at the end of the day, or I don't like waking up early, or we don't have a babysitter near us. You've got to drop the excuses and get creative, because your relationship matters. And remember that when the two of you are in sync, you're feeling connected, there isn't anything you can't handle together as a team. And that is the foundation of your partnership. And so for some couples, this check-in means waking up 30 minutes before the kids wake up on Sundays and having a cup of coffee together. Sometimes it is saying, all right, you know what? We'll stay up a little bit later after we get the kids to bed on Tuesday nights, or you can call it Marriage Monday. You've got to pick a time that it is a way to check in with each other and not constantly make the excuse. Or maybe you do hire a sitter and you do take a few minutes out of your date night to do this check-in. The point is, you have to look at your own life circumstances, block a time. This is a non-negotiable, not something that you put off, because your relationship matters. Now, that is the most logistical thing that you can do. All of these other points, do not forget them, because if you go through these questions to filter, it won't feel as though a ton of things are brought up to each other. It'll be like, in your relationship, if my partner is bringing this up to me, it is important to them. It has felt like a pattern to them. And it is something that I do feel needs to be discussed for our relationship to be stronger. So therefore, I'm going to be receptive to it, because they don't just bring up every willy-nilly frustration for them. So these are some really key points. Remember that the key with our podcast is implementation, not getting motivated for a minute. It's taking these points, remembering them, and implementing them. So make sure that if you're new here, you hit subscribe so you can hear past and future episodes. Make sure you go and look at all of our resources, especially what we mentioned, the family meeting guide. I highly recommend getting it as part of the next 30-day Prioritizing Us Couples Challenge. But all of our resources are linked at meetthefreemans.com/links with an S. That'll also be linked in the show notes. But if you enjoy this episode, please give us 5 stars on whichever platform you're listening on, and we will talk to you on the next episode.